Hello, my name is Kamelija Miloshev, and I'm the subject matter expert for chemicals and products and at Enhesa. For today's quick update on EU regulatory developments, I'll start with a general status update on everyone's favorite Universal PFAS proposal, specifically the long-expected and now finally published ECHA Socio-Economic Analysis Committee draft opinion and related matters, such as the currently ongoing consultation period, last updates on the PFAS proposal. We'll follow this up with another regulatory staple, the REACH regulation, go through the past month's most notable REACH updates, such as the expansion of the substances of very high concern list and also the entry into force of the novel PFAS in firefighting foams restriction. Then we'll continue with a brief stop in the world of cosmetics and its diverse selection of omnibus amendments, both adopted and proposed. And with that done, we'll close with a comfortingly straightforward development, namely the new Detergents Regulation. That said, let's get into it, starting with the Universal PFAS proposal, ongoing since 2023, when it was first submitted to ECHA. Well, a lot of time has passed since, so where do we stand now? So on the 11th of March this year, the Committee for Socio-Economic Analysis agreed on its draft opinion regarding this proposal. It's one of the two committees of the European chemicals agencies responsible for evaluating this EU-wide restriction proposal under EU's chemical legislation REACH. The Risk Assessment Committee, the other committee's final opinion has already been adopted on the 2nd of March. The SEAC opinion, however, still has to go through a 60-day consultation period, which started on the 26th of March and is going to be open until 25th of May this year. Once the consultation is done, the committee is expected to adopt its final opinion by the end of this year. And then once that's done, both opinions are going to be submitted to the Commission, which will then go on to propose a restriction for discussion and vote in the REACH committee. And then once that's adopted, the restriction would become part of Annex 17, the restriction annex of the REACH regulation. As far as the stances of the committees are concerned, they both support an EU-wide restriction subject to some relatively comfortable derogations on the manufacture, placing on the market and use of PFAS. You can follow the updates to this ever-developing issue online at the ECHA dedicated PFAS website. With so much focus on the legislative process surrounding this universal PFAS restriction, it may also be good just to remind ourselves of its general contents every now and then, as neatly condensed on this slide. If you'd like to review the proposal in more detail, that too is available on the website I just mentioned and hyperlinked on this slide. Interestingly enough, while the proposal has unsurprisingly been poorly received by industry, member states were also not content for it, but for a whole different reason. Namely, some member states thought that the EU wasn't moving fast enough to protect its citizens from the harmful effect of PFAS and have thus taken matters into their own hands, leading to quite some regulatory fragmentation across the EU. The forerunners and strictest regulators of PFAS have turned out to be France, Denmark, and Belgium, each with their own set of already adopted PFAS measures, more strict than the ones we are yet to see in the EU. In France, as of 1st of January this year, it's already prohibited to place PFAS-containing products from the following product groups: textiles, footwear, ski wax, cosmetics, waterproofing agents on the market. So this has already been running since January this year. In Denmark, from 1st of July, start of summer this year, it will be prohibited to import and sell clothing, footwear, and waterproofing agents for clothing and footwear if they contain a total fluorine content of over 50 milligrams of fluorine per kilo or more. And lastly, in Belgium, on the regional level, we are also seeing a lot of initiatives on the phasing out of PFAS from pesticides. So while we may have gotten used to the idea of chemicals regulation being practically fully harmonized at EU level, not really having to think twice about it, PFAS have sort of shattered this illusion, and member states are getting tired of waiting for the EU regulator to reach consensus regarding the inclusion of PFAS under the REACH regulation as part of a sweeping restriction. However, not all is bleak and unclear, as the EU legislators have reached consensus, at least on the following REACH manner, namely the new substances of very high concern to be added to the REACH candidate list. And once a substance is included in this list, it triggers certain reporting and communication requirements for companies placing the affected products containing the affected substances on the EU market. Typically, this list is updated twice per year in January and June. This year's update was published in February and provides two new inclusions to the list, n-hexane and Bisphenol AF. And its salts. The details of the regulatory obligations tied to substance of very high concern identification can be consulted in Article 33 of the REACH regulation. But details aside, checking whether a new substance of very high concern is present in any of the products you manufacture, import on, or distribute in the EU is always a good starting point for compliance. Another development to discuss as part of today's REACH agenda is also the entry into force of the PFAS in firefighting foams restriction, namely Commission Regulation 2025-1988 added a new entry to Annex 17 restriction list of REACH restricting PFAS in firefighting foams and certain firefighting equipment across the EU. In practice, companies placing the aforementioned on the market will have to comply with the numerous compliance deadlines as listed on this slide. I'll let you read them at your own leisure later on. For now, I'll focus just on two dates. First, the earliest compliance deadline in 2026, whereas from the 23rd of October this year, we'll have to comply with a number of operational requirements. So PFAS in firefighting foams in a concentration equal to or greater than 1 milligram per liter will still be allowed subject to compliance with certain specific operational obligations. Additionally, there are also labeling obligations for firefighting foams and PFAS containing waste, and it will also be the end of exemption time for firefighting foams and portable fire extinguishers. The second date I want to focus on, and the second most important compliance date, I would say, is then the 23rd of October 2030, when the general sweeping prohibition of marketing and use of PFAS in firefighting foams will enter into force. Not to look too far over the horizon, I recommend we focus on the earliest impeding compliance date, which I also personally find brings about the most interesting regulatory novelties, namely, as I said, from the 23rd of October this year, companies using PFAS in firefighting foams exceeding the certain threshold will have to comply with quite an eclectic selection of operational requirements. Namely, and I find this to be indeed most interesting, you will have to establish a PFAS containing firefighting foams management plan. This is going to be quite a concrete and comprehensive document that will take some time to put together. You can consult the content details in the amending regulation itself. It will also be required to ensure that firefighting foams are only used for fires involving flammable liquids. There's also going to be requirements on the reduction of emissions into the environmental compartments, direct and indirect human exposure to PFAS-based firefighting foams, and also waste management requirements for such firefighting foams. In this sense, though, companies will still be able for a limited time to continue using PFAS in firefighting foams, however, subject to compliance with the aforementioned conditions. Still, the sooner you can phase out PFAS from your products and operations, the better, I would say. My last REACH update has been in the pipeline so long, many would say it's actually simply stuck there, namely the long-awaited REACH revision promised in the 2020 European Green Deal, previously scheduled for 2025, postponed to 2026 due to negative opinion issued by Regulatory Scrutiny Board. Regrettably, this has been as contentious within industry as it has been also within the EU legislative branches. It really seems no one can agree on the scale, contents, and strategy for the REACH revision. This entire process has also been shrouded in really intense industry backlash and lobbying, many claiming also that the revision has fallen victim to the regulation mania, a tone shift we've seen recently within the Commission, communications, not just for this piece of legislation. That in mind, the negative opinion issued in 2025 was due to the proposal supposedly not being aligned with the Commission's new political priorities of competitiveness and simplification, a phrase often used when backing out of a previous environmentally forward legislative process. Some do, of course, argue that simplification isn't deregulation. We'll leave the debating to the politicians. And speaking of them, those in member state governments also haven't really been able to find common ground on the REACH revision and are thus also heavily fragmented on the topic. So with all of that said, we leave this slide none the wiser as we await a possible REACH revision proposal to maybe be published in 2026. It's hard to say. Returning to notably more certain territory, there has also been an update to the EU Cosmetics Regulation, the Cosmetic Omnibus VIII, which prohibits and restricts the use of several substances classified as carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction, entering into force as of 1st of May this year. This actually comes as a formal update of the EU Cosmetics Regulation to incorporate the latest harmonized hazard classifications as established by the amendment from 2024, this 22nd ATP, Adaptation to Technical Progress, to the Classification, Labeling, and Packaging Regulation. Omnibus VIII amends Annexes 2, 3, 4, and 5 to the Cosmetics Regulation. We'll have a closer look at that in a minute. And we'll see that these additional restrictions apply to both placing on the market and making available, so retail sale. Moreover, every non-compliant product on the market will also have to be withdrawn by the 1st of May 2026. And that in mind, I would advise any cosmetics manufacturers to naturally cross-reference their formulas with the full list of modifications and restricted substances in this Omnibus VIII amendment to ensure that no prohibited substances are present in your portfolio, that is, in your cosmetic product formulations. As for what exactly has been amended in the aforementioned annexes, first, we've seen 15 additional substances classified as carcinogenic, mutagenic, or reprotoxic added to Annex 2 on substances completely prohibited in cosmetic products. We've also seen the entries on perboric acid and its salts being consolidated under one entry, entry 1397 in Annex 2, and also the existing prohibition on colloidal silver nano in Annex 2 being amended to also include silver massive. Another update in Annex 3 has been on the use of silver powder and hexyl salicylate, which is restricted, meaning that these substances can continue being used subject to specific condition. Then also silver as currently listed in Annex 4 to the Cosmetic Regulation as an approved colorant. This has been amended to the effect that going forward, only silver in powder form can be used as a colorant and also subject to specific conditions. And lastly, sodium O-phenylphenate is added to Annex 5 as an approved preservative alongside O-phenylphenol. The Omnibus VIII Cosmetics Update Clarified will brave on to take a look at the other side of the coin, namely the slightly less clear Omnibus VI proposal for regulation to simplify rules for chemicals, cosmetics, and fertilizers. As far as its cosmetics regulation-related elements are concerned, the European Parliament finally reached agreement on its text after months of negotiation. The reason it took so long falls in line with our general theme of fragmentation, in this case between both the European Parliament parties and also the Commission. Some considered the proposal controversial due to its extension of the deadline for companies to stop selling cosmetics containing CMR substances, also because it would introduce greater flexibility for hazard labeling, seeing as a weakening of the system, and indeed, talking about weakening, also weakening the current automatic ban of CMR substances in cosmetics. A lot of discussion was also held over the Commission's proposed changes to Article 15. I won't go in detail here, but luckily these changes have been removed from the current proposal, still keeping a high level of protection for consumers. Ultimately, everyone was able to agree on a differentiated approach for the transition periods for cosmetics containing CMR substances. And if all goes well, we can expect to see Omnibus VI published this year. Last on today's agenda of noteworthy regulatory updates from the EU, we have the new Detergents Regulation as published on the 2nd of March this year. While companies placing detergents on the EU market will need to comply with its provisions only from the 23rd of September 2026 onwards. With regards to what those provisions look like and what the most important changes from the previous regime are, we've seen an expanded scope and updated definitions. That is, the definition of detergents now explicitly includes products with intentionally added microorganisms, products supporting the cleaning process when used with laundry or dishwasher detergents, and odor-modifying products for fabric, successfully closing a major gap from the previous framework. It also introduces, most notably, the famed mandatory digital product passport, adding detergents to the list of product groups under its wing, next to batteries and textiles. We also see new digital labeling with mandatory on-pack requirements there to reduce label clutter and improve readability, physical labeling obligations for refill stations, increased biodegradability obligations, more detailed restriction and conditions for phosphates and phosphorus compounds, a new framework for microbial detergents, which requires clear microbial identification and safety supporting data, strict animal testing prohibition, and also obligations for non-EU manufacturers to appoint an authorized representative